thing about you, my darling. You have been a witch since Witches of Instagram was just a glimmer in Kim Kardashian's pager. Okay, Katie? We know this about you. Give us the tea. What are the hashtags, just to introduce you to my cult community who might not know you already, which they should, and now they do. They feel you already. What are the hashtags that would just, be fitting to go underneath an Alese post at the moment?
I feel like if I was gonna use a hashtag right now, I'd probably use something like Dadaist Russian cartoons, like visual spell work, who gives a fuck, art.
Love all that, all that.
I think one of the hashtags that I like are obvious witch, but that's more of a personal joke than something that people are cruising. So the longer answer is I feel like currently I've gone from just making stuff that's all based on service oriented, front facing, hello, I will be your stewardess to your spiritual experience tarot reader, to making stuff that I kind of don't really care if it's received as like helpful or makes sense. I'm really interested in making art that I like, and I think that's what the quarantine has done for me. I don't give a fuck anymore. I'm just like, this is what I want to see. This is what I'm not seeing. I want to make it. So it's shifted from trying to figure out how to be as helpful as possible to everyone, whoever, to there's a lot of that out there, and not everyone demands that of me. I'm not the boss or the mommy of everyone that has to make sure everyone's all right. Like now I'm like, what do you want to do? Like you're gonna die, like possibly sooner than you want. So
my darling, yeah, I feel that. I've seen that evolution. I just did a quick perusal of her Insta, and I'm loving the art. It's like these very epic collages, and then like, esoteric poetry. And I just think what you are is, you are an artist, and I think as leaders who help people find themselves, you putting your shit out there as pure and raw as possible is also the work, right? It's the invitation.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I also felt stressed out about when I was studying psychology, which was like, you're telling people to be authentic and put themselves out there, where you're like this like pruned little vessel that's just holding the weight of everyone else. I also feel like when I started being a witch or a tarot reader or whatever, that wasn't as approachable as it is now. So yes. I'm not trying to be a hater on anyone, but like honestly, the popularity is really helping me take a load off, because I'm like, you guys got it, all you kittens, like to the front, whatever, like you smile, say that, oh, these are 3 tips on substitution for white sage and why you shouldn't use white sage. Like everyone's like on it, like, so very like Tumblr culture up there. And I'm like, okay, so the reason why I'm doing a tarot thing, and I have been, is because I think differently. I see things differently, and that's a very obnoxious and sort of boring thing to say, but it's also like, I'm just gonna go ahead and like be in my zone more, which I usually reserve for my inner world, and that's where all the tarot reading and stuff that I bring out into other people's sessions comes from. So I kind of just want to go in there,
Darling, I love this evolution for you, because as you were just joining, I was riffing with the community, and I was letting them know that you're the kind of person, you're like, don't even try to be a leader, but every time I've invited you into my sphere, there ends up being like a literal circle of girls, women, witches, whatever. Get at me. Call your whatever the fuck you want. I'm binary. Whatever. There ends up being a literal circle around you wherever you go, right? And so I think it makes total sense, this evolution of holding that responsibility, reflecting, like noticing that you are like kind of almost thrust into this position just by nature of like being that space holder, and then recognizing where in that have you not allowed yourself to be fucking fire, right? Like, yeah, you can also go, you can have your space to be the wild card, not always the space holder.
No, it's true. And I think that I just did my last episode for my podcast series called the Tarot Diaries, where I talk about personal stories. And I was having a lot of trouble finding the temperance episode. So I ended up airing this monologue about this essay I wrote a while ago. called The Weirdest Girl in the World. And it was about meeting this girl when I was young and being introduced to her as being weirder than me and being like, what? Like trying to like flex on her, and realizing as I got to know her that even though things that I do are like authentic to who I am, like a lot of it's based on trauma. So like trying to obscure yourself and be less relatable was a way of protecting yourself. And I think in that same way, sometimes being overly helpful and offering everyone their little thing is also very deflective. So it's not to say that everything I've done is like based on trauma and I don't actually give a shit and I'm only into being weird because I'm afraid of myself. Like that's not true. But like there's all this domino effect stuff. So where I'm at now is, you know, an evolution of everything that's ever happened to me as anyone else. And right now I'm just like interested in exploring other realms, especially with the ability to pass it off to a new generation of baby tarot readers that are like, I got it, you know? So I'm just like, okay.
I love it, my darling. I love this place for you. And you are such, like, you're such a, and not to like overuse an annoying phrase, but you are an old soul. Like there's something so amazing about you because at once you look like you're 22, you're gorgeous and glowing, and you could be a pop star of the next gen. And at the same time, there is a sense of like, you are speaking the kind of way that I imagine myself speaking when I'm like older, right? Like that you're ready for this next evolution of yourself and like to pass that torch and hand it over and then to move to a more liberated place for yourself.
Yeah.
So I want to do a little vision with you. I want you to, because I know you're a visionary, I want you to go all the way to the day that you're, I like to get morbid here. I hope you do too. The day you're going to die. You're just like, I'm dead. You know what I mean? Whatever that is. I want you to give me a retrospective on what evolution happened from here to there. Like what was the big evolution from here to the day that you die from this place?
Well, that's a great question because I think about that all the time. I mean, I've been waking up for years just like thinking about, oh my God, you're going to die. So I think that motivates a lot of the things I do. I've had a lot of near-death experiences and it doesn't exactly play out like a montage, you know, of like, you know, like you see in movies, but I think that what remains with you is like the people that you care about, any bitter thing that you've done towards yourself or others, like you want to figure out how to release that as soon as possible. And I feel like when I'm gonna die, I would like to have seen a picture of someone who is able to move past fear. And that's like a big obsession of mine lately, is like what scares me and why, and like how does that motivate me or tame me or keep me from doing things I actually care about. Like sometimes fear keeps you safe, like that's its job, but sometimes it can also really hurt you. So I mean, is it fear that makes you resent someone or like not want to do something or put yourself out there? I don't know. Like that's just
so what I'm hearing is there's two things coming through. One is like this idea of moving beyond fear, and specifically in the relationship arena where it's like that true place of coming to, you know what I heard the other day on Oprah, Super Soul, obviously, that what's the word? It's an R word. When we ask for, it's not coming to me, but really this idea of like beyond like holding some string of like this is right and this is wrong, being able to release that need to hold that and to be able to, for the sake of ourselves, truly forgive and love.
Yeah.
And so does it feel like that there is like one key relationship where you're like, if I can feel that way with this, that would be a big sign for me? You don't have to share who it is, but did you feel like you've got one of those that you're holding on to still?
That's a good question. I think that the ones that are pretty big deals in my life, like people that I've forgiven for horrible fucked up things they've done to me. Yeah. I think that I've come to terms with those. I think the thing that I really struggle with is the day-to-day, you know, like,
yeah,
like if somebody is like, take something I say the wrong way and they're like writing a rude text to me and I'm like, what? Like I get like, so it's life isn't really about like, overcoming these huge epic things or slaying a dragon. It's like the day-to-day annoyances and the day-to-day meditation of how to forgive people, which is not the thing, like suppressing how you feel or not processing or not allowing yourself to be upset or confused or angry. But I think that's harder because it just blindsides you, especially if you've like conquered horrible things. You start sometimes to get into your own mythology and you feel like maybe you deserve a break or maybe you deserve more respect from a stranger. And that's not really how life works, and that's not how we should live. So I
So
think
I want to get really, I love this. It's such a like really tangible thing. It's like we might feel like, okay, I've moved beyond this relationship, and then it's like the little thing that just is that reflection back to us that like that part of us still lives, and that part of us still needs a voice. So what do you feel like when you think you have this like specific trigger that's coming up for you now around like, you know, that sense of like you should, you know, respect me in this moment, that like little trigger moment that comes up for you? What do you feel like the message that you are meant to hear and receive is from that trigger as it's still showing up for you?
Well, that's the tricky part, because I mean, you never really figure out any like stationary autopilot. So maybe one day the lesson when somebody pisses you off or pulls a Karen on you at grocery outlet or whatever, like that day it's like, oh, like I need to be more compassionate or not assume something about myself based on someone being mad. Or and the next day it might be like, wow, I'm like really pissed off about this, and maybe this is about me figuring out how to express that wasn't okay without being a doormat or being a total bitch. Like, how do I figure that out? That's my lesson for the day. So
Yeah.
I feel like
Well, you know what I'm going to reflect back to you in terms of a strength that is showing up is that to be an empath means you have to walk around feeling all the shit, right? It's the second, right? And so you are so super empathic, and I'm really good at like sheltering myself from all vulnerability, but it doesn't always serve me as a coach, right, Katie? Because sometimes I'll just be like, bitch, just do the thing, and people are like, but I can't, and I'm like not able to like bridge that connect because I'm like, just do it. But you, my darling, hold the space, and that is part of that is feeling all the things, right? All the fucking time. How do we
yeah.
manage it? How do you manage that on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I don't always, you know, sometimes uh I mean, sometimes being an empath can be just a rebranded version of having like, I have PTSD, I live with that, and sometimes it means I'm just really sensitive to my environment, which is not mutually exclusive from having like a strong intuition in general. But sometimes I feel like I can't handle it, and I feel like
Yeah.
I need to not do anything or take a nap, and then I'll be thinking while I'm relaxing like that I'm not doing enough and I'm not showing up and I'm bad and like I'll never have a good life. And
Here's the thing, my cutie. The Matrix was built by sociopaths, not empaths. Okay. So I so hear you, and I feel like it's like this massive permission slip that you give just by being in your process. Like the days that you're like, you know what, I can't show up for an interview because I'm like dealing with some, you know, psychic downloads. That is
yeah,
a permission to every human that we are feelers.
I think that there's this, the major criticism I have currently about like the new age and the witchy shit, is sometimes I feel like people really think that to do it or to be credible, that they have to be infallible. And I don't think that's a really good model to project on anyone that you're working with, because even if somebody's not like overtly taking that on, like they're reflecting back to me that I'm not good enough, because you have to be this sort of like stone wall of perfection and know all the things in order to be in this level of being able to help anyone. Yeah. So because I'm not there and I'm like this little weakling that's like, please help, you know, I will never get there, or maybe that's not a possibility for me. So there's not that like real connection that helps us just be whoever we are. And it's really writing in the ego and doesn't plug into everyone being connected and everyone's just a fucking person floating around. And I don't really like that. I feel like it's very,
and my darling, it's what's the wonderful hypocrisy of what you're sharing is like it's the old cliche, like, you know, your therapist is in therapy. Like that, those who have these gifts by walking through the fire. Everyone on this stream right now knows that you really can't speak with authority on things you haven't fucking felt, right? So it's like, of course, the person who's helping people in their like healing journeys and their spiritual evolution goes through the fucking shit. Like that's it.
Yeah, and I mean it's like you go through it daily. Like we have good days and bad days, and sometimes that's based on an inner wave and an external experience. And I mean the terrain's always shifting, like we are always shifting. So I think it's really important to think about process and everything that you're doing, and to come with the expectation that there's always shifting and you're probably going to feel like shit more than you want. And it's not really like the aim to be perfect or to have everything stop so you can live in a adorable snow globe with no problems. Like I think that is a tall order. And I don't know, like I feel like even in just like sometimes representing a strong woman, it's like she's a badass, she doesn't give a shit, like she's like always rude when somebody says something to her. Like it's just like, what are we looking for? Are we looking to connect and to experience everything collectively and be happy and like be sad together and keep healing and growing? Or do we just want to be like adorable for somebody to secretly hate us on Instagram or whatever? Like what
Here's
is
the thing, my cutie. I love this too. I love this conversation. I just was listening to a podcast from a new friend. It's called Diva Behavior, and she talks about like women who've been labeled divas, right? And they were talking about the Kardashians, and they said something. They were having this really fascinating conversation about how celebrities can't be all good because part of the fun and the drama and the reason we watch is because they're doing something wrong or bad or that we disagree with, and that's why we watch. So as we put ourselves out there to expect that we would put something perfect out, it's like, what would be the fucking point? Just like as you pointed out, like if you're just posting pictures of teacups and flowers, you're stealing Britney Spears' brand. Shame on you. But like truly, like we actually as healers and as practitioners, you showing all your sides, the egolessness comes in letting someone dislike you because maybe that's their lesson for the day. So I'm going to turn it over to you now. I want to ask you if there is a shadow side of you or a part of you that maybe you have struggled to share that feels like it is teaching. It's a teacher for people to reflect and have that confrontation with. What side of you would that be?
Well, that's a good question. I'm gonna dissect it a little bit to answer properly. I feel like I don't really have as much interest in being a teacher anymore. I feel like for a while I really wanted to. I mean, I am teaching like a little kid tarot right now, and that's cute. But I don't know. I just feel like it's not my job to tell everyone how to be. And if I can help someone or like do something for someone to help them on their path, then that's also happening to me in my environment all the time. Like I'm good with that, but I don't really need to be here to like lord knowledge over people or be like, look what I did, like I feel like one thing that is inspiring me lately as far as my shadow goes is exploring my like post-traumatic stress disorder and how that what I think ruins my life sometimes and what that means. And that's becoming a fascination because it feels very alienating and it feels like something that is like my secret shame and I'm the only one in the world that's that weird, and that's not true. So when I was younger, it was really very Me Too movement kind of stuff. And I feel like we have culturally made a lot of progress, so we could talk more openly about that kind of thing and that taboo. And now I feel like it's more on the aftermath, which is having PTSD. So I think that's really giving me a lot of inspiration on like talking about things. Or currently I'm making a lot of videos about art that video art about panic attacks or having kind of like a disassociative moment or just things that like really freak me out. And I think that they're really hard to explain. So using visual terms for what the experience feels like and how I can like draw on images in my head to like guide me through it.
And that right there, my darling. I love it. It's a circle back to that idea of the old model of psychology and being this blank slate, where the artist is sometimes the one who can actually express the feeling underneath the thing that is actually having that resonance. We know it's so powerful to know that someone else like feels that feeling, and that's why it feels good to laugh together, because it's like this deep understanding of something.
Yeah, and also laughter, it takes the edge off of everything. So it's like, don't take it too seriously. Like you're like, haha, and you like send it back up to the sky. Like it's not something that is everyone's secret burden that they have to be so somber around. Like once you laugh or release, or it's not your problem. You don't have to be the boss of it. You don't have to hide anything. You don't have to be ashamed or teach it to everyone. Like you could just let the fuck go. And like by doing that and breathing, I think is also a cue that maybe other people can breathe. Maybe they don't like it. Maybe they do. I don't know. But like that's up to them, you know? So I just feel like I'm in a space where I'm not really trying to tell anyone what to do, which is also part of my shadow. I'm really bossy. So
I love that, but that's beautiful to be in that dichotomy and like working with that voice and feeling that you're growing into this softer touch where you're expressing yourself and you know that that's enough. Like you being in your process is the teaching. That's really it. Like your life is the fucking teaching.
yeah, I mean, it's also so I've been doing readings for a very, very long time, since before I was like publishing like, you know, decks or saying that I'm doing this or working with anyone. I've been making art and writing for a really long time, and that was a very private experience. And so when I started doing readings for friends and that became bigger and bigger, there comes a point in the capitalist agenda where you're like, what are you going to do now? Are you going to be a tarot reader? So if you're a tarot reader, you have to be presenting into the world that you're open for business and this is what you can offer, and not everyone can pay for it. So figure out how to get a corporate gig where they pay you enough to get your bills paid and people can have free readings. How do they want you? You have to be like, hey, I could do this and it's not scary. And then they're like, okay, here's some money so you could pay your rent and you can meet your goal of giving free readings. Maybe people can't go to those readings, so you should do free readings on YouTube, and you want to keep it friendly because you still want to get the corporate events and you still want to go forward. This is your career. And quarantine happens and you're like, I have no events. Like I am free. I could do whatever the fuck I want and I could die. So maybe I should change my focus, which has been coming from a good place of wanting to do things I care about in a capitalist world, and figuring out how to make terms with that in a way that feels ethically to me, ethical, into like, what do you really want to do here? Like you just have to do that. Like you could do anything.
Yeah.
Well, I think I'm shifting because it's not completely about like putting out a face or a brand exactly, but it's more like experimenting with creating things that I really want to see in the world and I also want to express. And this becomes a little shifted from the concern of how people are going to perceive me, because it's just things I really want. So,
and my darling, it's just none of their fucking business. It's like the thing that we have no control over is how it's received. I had an incredible acting teacher once say I did a monologue and I was like, that wasn't very good. And he was like, you don't get to tell us how we feel about you. We don't. And it's like so cliche, but it's just the truth. Like cliches are true. That's why we keep saying them. But it's none of our business how, you know, like who is going to come to it, who's going to resonate with it, how are they going to resonate with it. And that's all that capitalistic marketing shit that is just so ass backwards. And so you're just finding this freedom and liberation to create from where you are and be as curious as the viewer as to where she's going.
yeah, no, totally. I mean, I feel like I want to feel free to be curious about things and like enjoy things. And I think the concern of how you're being perceived strongly comes from a place of survival, you know, like
Yes.
if not perceived well, we may be banished, we may be hurt, we may be taken away from things that we care about or people we love or our home and like very basic animal needs. We might be not allowed to work, you know, so these are all things very concerning to the core of your being. And it's not just egotistical to worry about how people perceive you. but there is a point where it becomes just this preoccupation that we're all so indoctrinated with that we're not really checking it sometimes, and it can get out of hand and actually make us very unhappy. So I
Mm-hmm.
think an important part of the being to consider how you're being perceived, and also want to make other people comfortable around you and care, but also it shouldn't be your aim in everything you do, because that isn't fucking fun at all, you know?
And it's also not, it's disempowering to others to feel that protective of their experience. It's their, we can only do our piece and come from our place, and then to handhold so much others experience of us is actually like kind of belittling to them.
Yeah, it can be. And it also, I think that, like you say, the shadow teaching you, like what the shadow of that is, like, I wish somebody would hold my hand and care about me when I didn't know anything. And if I'm confused or scared, that somebody would show up and say, it's all right, come here. Like, I'll show you. Like,
Yeah.
maybe I want that too. So it's
And
weird.
there's, like you said, there's everyone for everyone. Like we're all, it's, there's no like we're on the path and someone's ahead of us. I don't believe in that shit, but I do believe that there is someone that we're all resonating with, and different circles that we're resonating with at different moments.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, I think that when you have a full life, you should be able to play every part. You should be able to be the bitch, the dumbass, whatever the Meredith Brooks song lists. Like that should
Yes, my
be,
darling.
that you shouldn't feel ashamed of that, you know, like being wrong, being right, being in the front of the line or whatever. It's all,
Switching up positions, as Ariana says, you know, like, yes. My
yeah.
darling, I want to ask you, if you were to say, okay, the Alese beyond all fear, what does she do? What is different about the way she behaves, acts, feels beyond all fear? Just imagine.
That's a hard question for me. I mean, fear is like my biggest toxic relationship in my life. Is like I'm afraid all the time. So I mean, I'm obsessed with like horror films and like scary podcast videos and murder shows and like forensic file. Like I'm like always taking in fear because I want to just feel like immune to it, you
Yeah,
know?
you want to it's almost like you want to, yeah, like, oh, that's so interesting. It's like the love you have. And
Yeah.
then, you know, it's like the love you know, right? The love you know.
Well, I think that when something is like overwhelming to you, you could either try to ignore it or try to be like, I need to figure this out. Like,
Yes.
so that's maybe why I'm so obsessed with that shit. But if I didn't have fear, I'd probably be very different because I wouldn't be watching my favorite shows and like, I don't know what I would do.
You'd
I
be
was
watching The Bachelorette with me, because I'm like the opposite. I need everything to be vanilla. Like I can't take anything triggering remotely. I'm like, oh no, please.
I can't with it. Those shows get me really mad. I don't know why.
They're so literally, you feel yourself getting stupider. They're no good for anything.
Stresses me out. Okay, so if I wasn't afraid, if I had no fear, I imagine I'd just be dead or something because I wouldn't. But you're saying like a healthy amount of fear instead of just like,
Yeah. I'm not saying like, not like I ain't never scared, I'm running in front of cars, which is a hilarious image. Every time I hear that song, I just imagine someone going, I ain't never scared. But like beyond, let's say, like the irrational fear, beyond the mind chatter fear that affects the whole situation.
I like that. I'd probably be a lot happier. I think that I'd feel a little bit more motivated to like apply to grants, you know. I think that there's a lot of things that are intimidating to me, which is I guess like an incarnation of fear. I think that I would just like push myself a little more, you know. I feel like a lot of the stuff that I'm doing is like kind of like on the sidelines, like, yeah, I'll get in there. Like, I'm just gonna like psych myself up by doing all of these unnecessary things because I'm kind of scared and I don't feel ready. So if I didn't feel afraid of anything, I guess I would just go for it. But
All right, Jolie, what's the biggest lie that you tell yourself?
that everyone thinks I'm a stupid bitch and they're only nice to me because they feel bad for me.
So you got an inner mean girl for sure. Okay, and then what is like higher power, like goddess you, that you're gonna reincarnate back into? What does she feel about where you place yourself. So like that you're seeing yourself doing this little sideline game where you're like, ooh, 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 ooh. Where does she place you? What does she know you're capable of that maybe you don't always believe you're capable of?
I guess if I was going to imagine my ideal self, like, as somebody that would align with my goals, would be somebody that has land in the woods and has a retreat center and just like gets up every day and like does something and like holds events and has people that I work with that I'm having a great time with and, you know, enjoys my life. Like, you know, that's what I
I
want to do.
love that. I love that. And let's give her 40 to 50 years before she dies there. Because you know, I feel like in your mind it's like the day you die, like this peace comes over you. But we want to get there now so that you can actually have the life there, right, Katie?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for some reason I assume that I'm going to live an obscenely long time.
Yeah.
That so I'm dying all the time, but I for some reason assume that I'm going to live a long time if I don't.
You know what? I love this so much, my darling. So because my dream is Brava Estates. I talk about it all the time. So like I also will be adjacent. You must be adjacent communities, okay, Katie? I want to be adjacent to your property. I want to come to your retreats.
Oh yeah, you're definitely invited.
I can't wait. So, okay, tell me one more thing before we go. I want to ask you. Someone comes, they visit your retreat space. They get to work with you, live with you, be with you. They're driving back to normal world. You know, maybe they live in New York or LA. They just came to pop in and spend a weekend in this environment you've created. What would your biggest hope for their shift be when they went home?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I don't know. Like I said before, I don't really feel like the boss of everyone, but I would want them to feel like they're not so stuck in a box of their day-to-day consciousness. There's this artist that said, "You think where you live." Um, and I heard that in high school and I was like, whatever. But I'm obsessed with that now. And I'm like, you know, sometimes when you go outside of your normal space, you're able to shake some dust off and start to reimagine how you enter your life or how things are influencing you. And I think that's good. So that's what I would wish.
And what a perfect, you think where you live, what a perfect invitation right now for, we've all been on like this unplanned for meditation retreat, surprise, surprise. And I think the liberation, noting that the liberation truly is through the mind, and that at first, in order to get liberated, we have to realize that we're trapped. And so a lot of us have had a lot of feelings of that, of being in the mental structure and what the habits of mind that are keeping us trapped. And so even as we can't physically move around as much as we want to all the time right now, how do we find that Alese retreat experience where we shift that shit up?
I mean, I don't know because I would like to have like a solid answer, but I guess I'm still like searching for it, you know.
And my God, that was rhetorical. That was a little thought. But I want to, okay, one more thing, because you do feel into the collective. Is there anything that you want to share? And knowing that we're not asking you to preach or be a teacher, anything that's just coming up for you today that you might want to share, like collective wise, energy wise, that you're feeling into?
Um, well, I feel inspired to complain.
I love that.
Well, my back hurts, and I wish that I would, you know, be more motivated to work out and stuff. And I feel like um, it's something that I keep thinking every day I'm going to do, and I'm just not doing. So I feel like the thing that's really coming up for me is like the challenge to not overthink procrastination itself and just like be like, oh, I'm going to do it right now. So,
All right, my darling, because you have retired from all bossiness ever, right? And I, my darling, I'm just taking it. I'm 2021 goal, be bossy. Here's my bossiness
not
to
really,
you.
I can't shake it. I'm just trying to be a little.
You're detoxing. You're detoxing. Well, I love that. I love that. So here's my fully boss mode, fully bossy mode for you. This thought came to me the other day. Take it if you want it. Move when it comes to shit like this. Move faster than the voice of doubt. So if you're like, I gotta go exercise, but and the voice comes up, literally just be like, fuck you to the voice, and just keep moving faster than that voice, and you'll find yourself, okay, now I'm outside and I'm going for a walk.
Okay,
I'm gonna outpace the voice.
I like that. I'll take the challenge.
All right, I love that for you. You're so beautiful. Thank you so much for joining. Any last words for the community?
Be kind to yourself. Everyone's imperfect. Nobody needs that you are perfect. So give yourself a fucking break. That's all.
Oh my God. Can you, okay. They'll see your tag, but give us all the ways to follow you, because even if you don't want to be a teacher, you can't help it. You fucking are.
Well, how about here on Instagram? You put this on YouTube. I also have a YouTube channel that is also linked through my Instagram bio. So if you want
And
to
it's
follow
at Alese Osborn, right?
Mhm.
Okay, great.
the name,
We love it. We love it so much. She got the name and I got my name. We all got our fucking names. Okay, you're the best.